Welcome, everyone. What we're going to be looking at right now is the syllabus for Pathophysiology Bio 210. So let's run through this. Shouldn't take too long, but I just want you to get comfortable with some of the information that you can find here. A lot of times students just kind of breeze through it, but there are some key essentials that I want us to focus on. So I'm Dr. Stephen Lindner. You can reach me by email at slindner@adelphi.edu. Common mistake, students try and email me and then they don't hear back from me because they forget one of these N's, either before or after the D. So there's an N in front and behind the D. It is an online course, it's asynchronous, and there's a lot of benefits that come from an asynchronous course. I have found that the majority of the students truly appreciate the concept of asynchronous teaching. So what does that really mean? It means that you have a lot of freedom, but it also means that the course requires self-discipline. So an asynchronous course means that all of the course content and delivery is done as if it was a live course, but it's recorded. It's recorded. It was done live at one point in time, and now you're watching the course. And you have more freedom, meaning you don't have to be here Tuesday at 6 p.m. or Saturday at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. You have all week to complete all of your work. So the discipline is really important because the self-discipline means you have to say, okay, this assignment is due Sunday before midnight. So I'm going to work on my time management this week. I see exactly what needs to be done. I see that there is a lecture that needs to be watched or two lectures that need to be watched. And each lecture, let's say, is going to take 40 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, whatever the time frame is. And if there's two lectures and it's 2.5 hours for the week, you need to set aside 2.5 hours. Then you say, okay, what else do I have to do this week? It looks like there's 2 case studies that I have to do. All right, each case study may take me 40 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, depending on your skills. Okay, so I'm going to set aside Saturday morning 2 hours to get these 2 case studies done. Okay, fantastic. Is there anything else that I have to do this week? No, not this week. But it looks like next week I have to do the same thing. I have to watch a lecture, do a case study, and it looks like there's an exam. Oh my, the exam. What time and day is the exam? Well, the beauty of asynchronous is that the exams are a 3-day window. So you have 3 days, any time during the 72 hours, you'll set aside an hour or so to take the online exam. All right, so that's the beautiful part about asynchronous, is that there's a lot of freedom that comes with it, but at the same point in time, you have to be good with self-discipline in terms of time management. Create your weekly schedule, look at what needs to be done at the beginning of the week, and time manage. And if you could do that, you'll be extremely successful, not just in this course, but in all courses that run asynchronously online. Here are my office hours. If you can't make it during the office hours, shoot me an email and we'll set up a time that works best for you. So here is the course description. The students will learn the key principles underlying diseases that enable them to form a basis for understanding how they're detected and treated. Fundamental biology concepts and processes in the pathophysiology and their relationships to developmental stages and the needed treatments for specific disorders will be emphasized. So here is the rationale. You can read that on your own time, but it's a basic, fundamental, foundational class, no matter what healthcare discipline you're moving in. whether it is medicine, whether it's nursing, whether it's PA, whether it's surgical technician, whether it's physical therapy assistant, whether chiropractic, whether you want to be an acupuncturist, whether you want to be a dentist, whether you want to be an osteopath, x-ray tech. You all need some basic pathophysiology background, and that's what this course is going to give you. So here are the learning goals. You can take some time to read through them, and again, each week there will be specific learning goals that apply to the weekly's topics. In terms of prerequisites for the course, your Anatomy 1 and Anatomy 2 are prerequisites. That's your Bio 203 and Bio 204. And the Physiological Chemistry, which is Chem 109. The use of basic word processing program, Word, is certainly necessary for this course because of the case studies that you will be writing for most weeks. If there's any type of disability or any type of challenge that you feel exists, it needs to be registered with the Student Access Office, and you and they will contact me, and all necessary accommodations will be applied. In terms of the honor code statement, you can see that here. The Code of Academic Honesty prohibits behavior which can be broadly described as lying, cheating, or stealing. Violations of code or academic honesty include, and you can see, but they're not limited to, fabricating data or citations. This is very important. You want to make sure that if you're stating something in a case study or a paper, that you properly cite the source from which you're getting that information, and not claiming that you were the owner of that information, or trying to say that you were the originator of that information. Okay? It's okay to use others' work, but you have to give credit where credit is due. And that's what your references are for, and citation. Sabotaging others' work, facilitating of dishonesty, cheating on exams, we'll go through that as well, talking, using signals, using additional resources, and I'll go through that with the online exams. Okay. Turnitin. In terms of your case studies, it will be going through Turnitin, which means that your work needs to be original and it needs to be yours. And if you're sharing work with other classmates, that will be a problem because it will pick up whose other paper has the exact same information. It will tell me if it came from a previous semester, and all parties are brought into it, and it becomes nasty. So please make sure you just do your original work. If you're using a reference from another source, again, that's okay, as long as that whole reference is not your answer. There does have to be critical thinking involved, but it's okay. What I mean is, when it goes through Turnitin, it can't have an 85% score that flags. Typically 15%, in some cases 20% is acceptable in terms of that information coming from other sources. But again, it must be referenced and cited properly. At the end of the term, of course, there are course evaluations that you can fill out. Everything, all your work is reviewed here within Moodle. All of your assignments are uploaded in Moodle. All of your exams are taken in Moodle. All of the information provided, content and delivery, takes place here in Moodle. In terms of the required textbook, we are using the 6th edition of Gould's Pathophysiology for the Health Professions. This is required. There are test questions that come directly from this book, and in order for you to get working on your case studies, you'll certainly need the textbook. Recommended text. In order to understand patho physiology. You certainly have to understand anatomy and physiology. So always having your A&P textbooks handy are always a great reference to use, as well as a handy medical dictionary or medical terminology dictionary is always great to have, whether it's a hard copy or an application, some sort of app that you use on your smartphone. In terms of examinations, there's going to be a total of 7 examinations. The exams count as 45% of your total grade. The lecture exams will cover 2 to 3 chapters on average. Exams will be a combination of multiple choice, matching, some true and false, somewhere between 50 and 75 questions on each exam. The exams will be opened on a 3-day period, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This takes into account holidays. If there's a holiday on one day or on 2 days, you still have that third day to take the exam. They do have to be completed by 11:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. There are no makeup exams permitted with online. If you miss an exam and its deadlines, and you miss their deadlines, you will get a 0 score on the exam. Exams will be using Lockdown Browser, which has a monitor. You will be required to have a laptop computer that's fairly new. It's got to be around 3 years old or newer. It has to have a built-in webcam and a microphone that are all functional. If it is not, you have to try and make that happen. You can always purchase an external camera, an external microphone, but you need both microphone and camera to take your exams. You cannot have a headset plugged in to your microphone, to your computer, or activate your Bluetooth. You need to make sure that your audio is being recognized and that we can hear it. If you plug something in, it blocks the audio, and that is not acceptable. So these are just a few recommendations on different types. You don't have to get those, but they're there. You can purchase them, Amazon, Walmart, most of these online stores. Here are some of the basics that are important in taking an online exam. These instructions are also posted on each and every exam that you take, and you will be prompted to do these steps on a practice quiz that you will see within the first week's work that everyone must do. So you have to be sitting at a desk, a stationary desk. A bed or a couch is not acceptable. This holds true for the practice quiz. For the practice quiz, we want you to do it as if it was a real exam. Okay? Pretend it's a real exam because we will be watching them and critiquing them. And if there are certain steps that are not followed, you will be made aware and you will have to acknowledge that. Make sure there is no window or light source directly behind your head. You can imagine what happens if someone's taking your picture and the sun is behind you. It blocks you out. It just kind of darkens you. So that is not acceptable. Make sure that the respondus monitor asks for your environment check. And these are the steps that you'll be required to do. You'll take your camera and your laptop with the built-in camera, and you must scan your entire desk. The entire desk means corner to corner, front end to back end. The entire desk has to be scanned. It has to be clear of everything. Notes, books, loose papers. There can't be anything on your desk, just like if you were taking an exam in a traditional classroom setting. The desk is cleared off. If you happen to have a monitor, a second computer monitor on your desk, you have to put a towel or a sheet over it, okay, to cover that up, in addition to being turned off. You have to scan under your desk. You have to slowly scan the entire room, 360 degrees, capturing all of the walls, including what you will scan last, which is the ceiling right above your testing station. And again, everything has to be done slowly. If there is a piece of paper on your desk, that is okay, but you have to show the front and the back to the camera slowly and show that it is empty and there's nothing written on it. And before you hit the final submit button, you have to show that same piece of paper, hold it up to the camera for a few seconds for the front and the back so the camera can see what you had written down. Almost as if you were taking a test in a classroom and you have scratch paper. That paper is submitted and becomes an official document as part of the exam. So no different. The only thing that you can write on the piece of paper is show this piece of paper to the camera before exiting the exam. That's a little reminder note because there's no prompt that will pop up on the screen to remind you to do it. So you can put your own little note on that piece of paper. You have to have your own computer, has to have a strong connection, preferably wired. If not, Wi-Fi is acceptable. It'll prompt you through a strong connection. When you take your exam, you can't cover your face at any time during the exam. Your face will fall in the field of view at all times. Otherwise, it shuts down. It won't allow you to move forward if your face falls out of the screen and the field of view. So whatever position you start in is the position you'll remain through the exam. During the exam, you can't access other resources, a phone, another computer, notes, books. You can't wear a smartwatch. You can't communicate with anyone. So please follow those instructions. You have to stay in your seat. Focus on your computer screen. Look straight ahead. If your eyes leave the monitor, you have to tell the camera and show the camera what it is that you were looking at. You can't be staring off to the side and then not expect to be questioned on that. Okay, so you're being recorded through the entire exam. If you're looking down, you would just say, okay, I'm just writing a few notes about this. You would have to tell the camera that. Okay. Do not sit on a bed. Do not sit with a bright light or window behind you. Sit at a table and a solid chair. No beds or couches, no hats, no hoodies, no earbuds or headsets. Use the bathroom before the exam starts. Keep a tissue on the table. A glass of water is fine so that you don't have to walk away from your computer station. Your timer is running. Once you start the exam, the timer runs. And although there's a 3-day window, it's not like you can take part of the exam today, stop it, and then in the evening take the second half. It doesn't work that way. You have to sit down. Once you start the exam, it's completed in one sitting, and the timer does move. Okay, if you have a blank sheet of paper, show the front and back of the paper to the camera before the exam and after the exam, but before you hit the final submit. Failure to do so is a 10-point deduction off the grade. Pictures taken of the paper once the camera has stopped is not accepted. They must be shown during the video while the video or the exam is actually running and not afterwards, okay? There are no reminder prompts for that, so that's the only thing that you can write on the piece of paper. And then finally, remember, you can't exit the exam until all the questions are completed and submitted for a final grade. If you don't follow those instructions, then you will fail the exam. Okay, so enough of that. Let's do the case studies. Exams are 45%. Your case studies are 40%. So I will run a separate video and create a separate video on the case study rubric. We'll go over that. But typically, each week there's at least 2 case studies for you to do. And this is not something that should be done quickly, just to say that you did it, because you will earn the type of points that reflect the amount of time and energy that you've put into it. Okay, and it does carry significant weight. You'll see that this almost weighs the same as the exams. So for those that may not be good test takers, this is here to help you. And this is the part of the grade that's really within your control to score well. So I will take the time and go over the rubric and give you a little bit of an example of that. So where does the other percentage come from for the remaining 15%? Each student is going to create an online Panopto video PowerPoint presentation that counts as 15% of the total grade. You will be discussing some sort of disease, and you will pretend as if you are already a seasoned healthcare provider and you were asked to do a presentation. And the presentation has a rubric amongst itself. I will go over the rubric in a separate video that clearly shows how you earn the points. But generally speaking, you will be discussing the clinical condition, the people who are affected, what are some of the causes, what are the diagnostics, what are the treatment or different procedures involved to assist these people. Are there certain lifestyle changes, things that they should do to help? Are there certain things that they need to eliminate from their lifestyle to help them improve? And again, I'll go over a rubric that goes over that in a little bit more detail. So again, your exams are 45%, case studies 40%, and the presentation 15%. Here is the grading scale. You can review that. Attendance, look, with online exams, with an online asynchronous course, there is no attendance, but I do go through what your activity is. I look at the analytics. So if you're doing poorly, I go to the analytics and I can see why you're doing poorly. If you're doing well, the analytics typically reflect how much time and effort you're putting in as well. In terms of late submissions, here's where your time management comes in play. In terms of exams, there are no makeups on exams. In terms of the assignments, there's a pretty significant hit that comes your way if there is a late submission. Whether it's 1 minute late, 5 hours late, it makes no difference, okay? We're trying to train you to be prompt. For me, prompt is always early. Okay, those are just my work ethic habits. So if there's a late submission, it's a 25% deduction for the first 24 hours that it's late. Again, it doesn't matter if it's just 2 minutes late or whether it's 23 hours late, it's still 25% deduction. And for each day there after the 24 hours, it's an additional 10% on top of that. All right, so let's go through what topics we'll be going through and what the exam schedule is. So in week 1, we'll be covering chapter 1 and 5. 1 is the introduction to pathophys. Chapter 5 is inflammation. And for each of these chapters, there's PowerPoints and my lecture that goes through most of them. There are a few topics that there will not be a video lecture, but it's pretty clear that that information will be somewhat self-taught. But when I say self-taught, there's typically a case study that you'll do to learn that information and to help you learn it. And some of those topics will be on the exam. Week 2, we'll be covering infection and immunity. That's chapter 6 and 7. But you'll notice that at the end of week 2 is your first exam. And that is the 2 chapters that were covered the week before. All right, so chapter 6 and 7 from week 2 is not on that exam. Week 3, we'll be doing pain and neoplasms. Week 4, we'll be covering skin disorders and musculoskeletal disorders. Now, on exam 2, there will be chapter 6, 7, and 20, 6 and 7 from chapter 2, and 20 from chapter 3. You'll see that I did not put chapter 4 on the second exam. Okay, I wanted to cover that information, but I'll be putting chapter 4, which is pain, on your third exam. The third exam is going to have 4, which is from week 3, and we'll also have 8, 9 from week 4. All right, so week 4, we're doing skin disorders and musculoskeletal. That's chapter 8 and 9. And week 5, we're doing nervous system disorder, part 1. Week 6, nervous system is pretty big. Week 6, we'll do Continue with Nervous System Part 2. And at the end of week 6 is where we'll have exam 3, which is chapter 4, 8, and 9. You'll see again what we're covering in these 2 weeks will not be on exam 3. It will be on exam 4. So you always have a little additional time to review that. Week 7, we're doing blood disorders and lymphatic disorders. Week 8, cardiovascular disorders. And then at the end of week 8, that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday again, is exam 4, which is chapter 12, which is the cardiovascular disorders. Okay. Let's move on. Let's see what else we have here. Cardiovascular. Let's look at digestive disorders, week 9. Week 10, digestive orders, part 2. That's a biggie. And that's at the end of week 10, we're going to have exam 5, which will be chapters 10, 11, and 12. Okay. Just want to make sure. Yes. Okay, good. On week 8 for exam 4 was chapter 14, which was the nervous system disorder. I just want to make sure I didn't mess that up. My eyes are seeing quite a few things here on my page at one time. Okay. Now we did week 9, we did week 10. That's going to be digestive again. Pretty big chapter, just like nervous system was. So there's a part 1 and part 2. And then at the end of week 10 is exam 5, chapter 10, 11, and 12, which is going to be blood, lymphatic, and cardiovascular. Week 11, we're doing respiratory disorders. Week 12, we're doing endocrine disorders. At the end of week 12 is exam 6 for chapters 13 and 17, which is going to be digestive and respiratory. Week 13, we're doing urinary system. We'll discuss acid-base and balance. Week 14, we're doing reproductive disorders. And then the finals week 15, the last exam is going to be covering chapters 2, which is pretty short, chapters 16, 18, and 19. Okay, so that is a little overview on the syllabus. We hope that's pretty clear. And again, it will follow the modules that you'll see in Moodle.